Hello and welcome once again to another episode of flickpov.com, and today we're going to read one of our articles called 5 Keys to Understanding Beef on a Deeper Level, which, by the way, I am very excited to read again and come back to this piece that I wrote 1 year ago because Season 2 is officially in the making and I'm so excited. I thought this was going to be a mini-series and I'm excited to see Season 2. So remember, I will have a little discussion till the end of the episode. And if you've already read the article at flickpov.com, maybe just skip ahead until we commented, and thank you for being here. 5 Keys to Understanding Beef on a Deeper Level. Number 1. Amy and Danny are unstable. This show starts with road rage, especially one where the parties are involved and committed to pissing off one another. Both drivers pass their rage to strangers or third parties. It's some sort of neuroticism. When people are so deeply frustrated with the outcome of their lives, they face constant anger, disillusion, disappointment, and stress. However, dealing with baggage as big as that is incredibly difficult. Therefore, people who face this sort of mental instability tend to disregard their emotional discomfort towards other people. They try to look for someone to blame instead of themselves. They also try to pass on their pain to someone else as if they could avoid feeling those emotions. But really, they're distracting themselves and ultimately getting involved in bigger problems that worsen their feelings. What is neuroticism? According to Britannica Encyclopedia, neuroticism in psychology and development, a broad personality trait dimension representing the degree to which a person experiences the world as distressing, threatening, and unsafe. Each individual can be positioned somewhere on this personality dimension between extreme poles, perfect emotional stability versus complete emotional chaos. Number 2, women doubting themselves. Another way of dealing with disappointment with the outcome of our lives or the sentiment of emptiness and dissatisfaction is by pushing ourselves to the limit, working all day, and trying to be perfect just to quiet those thoughts of not feeling enough. How do these emotions present in women? A lot of women in the workforce deal with 2 professions, their work life and motherhood. Many women are working as full-time moms as well as full-time employees or business owners. Even though they are succeeding at it, society's judgments are constant, especially if they are not spending time with their kids 24/7 or making their children their only focus. Even if people around them keep things to themselves, they have grown up in a misogynistic society with patriarchal ideals, so many of them end up judging themselves as if they are not good enough. A perfect example is Amy. She wants to retire and spend time with her daughter June. We can tell she cares about her daughter and is involved in her life physically and emotionally, but she still doesn't feel enough. She wants to be the perfect business owner, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and the perfect woman. But can anyone be perfect? Can anyone bear the pressure of trying to be perfect? No one can deal with expectations as big as that forever, and people who are so hard on themselves like Amy eventually break. They need comfort, affection, love, attention, and support from others. Looking for others to satisfy those needs is crucial because people who are so hard on themselves can hardly give themselves the kindness they need. However, they also feel like others will not satisfy their needs. No one can give them what they need to silence aggressive or impatient thoughts because what they deeply need is self-acceptance. Once they quiet those judgments, they will most likely feel better. For example, in episode 2 at the chair exhibition, while fighting about the gun Amy found in the safe, Amy says to George, "That house that I don't even get to enjoy because I'm always busy working. When do I get to enjoy something, huh? Who's gonna buy Amy something? Amy is. Amy is gonna buy Amy something." Number 3, identity crisis. Our main characters, Amy and Danny, are deeply troubled with the outcome of their lives. Danny seems to recognize this feeling because he is struggling financially, constantly fighting with his brother and cousin. He doesn't feel like he has achieved success because he has been trying to buy a house for his parents to bring them back to the United States, but he hasn't achieved it. On the other hand, Amy doesn't look like she's aware of the dissatisfaction with the outcome of her life. She is reactive and explosive at times, but she doesn't know why. In a way, she represses her emotions. She probably thinks she should be happy and completely satisfied because she managed to grow her wealth and she has her family. They have this beautiful house she worked so hard to build and decorate, and she has an upcoming business offer that might allow her to retire and dedicate her entire time to her relatives. But that's not enough for her. She blames herself for feeling like that, as if she shouldn't have those sentiments. This also leads to another question. What does success mean? Or what takes us to be successful? In general, we are taught to perceive success as fame and wealth. If we were to look at Amy's life superficially, we could jump to conclusions and say she enjoys her achievements. But does she really? I can't tell you what success is, but I can tell you what I think it is. I believe its meaning is completely subjective and depends on what each of us considers important. The only thing I can tell you is my definition of success. To me, success is being able to enjoy most of our days and our time. It's having the luxury of experiencing joy and satisfaction for most of our lives. To have those experiences, we must be mentally stable. In a sense, success also represents emotional stability and sanity. Having dealt with anxiety and depression for so long, I truly wish one day I might have the capacity of managing and facing my emotions in a healthier way. When one is mentally stable, one can even face misfortunes in a better way and tolerate frustration without taking it out on others or self-sabotage. Think about it. Sometimes, without the skills to cope healthily, humans try to deal with frustration, disappointment, and sadness through alcohol, drugs, arguments, fights, violence, and in the case of this show, road rage. Unfortunately, those defense mechanisms only worsen our symptoms. We end up involved in more problems and ultimately make our lives harder. The interesting part of the show is how it introduces us to a man who is struggling. A woman who apparently has it all, yet they're both miserable. It might also be an invitation to question our beliefs regarding success. Lastly, self-acceptance can also be a sign of success. Being able to accept our essence, our way of being, our desires, our modus operandi, if it's healthy and functional, might lead us to have a more pleasurable life. Number 4, midlife crisis. I believe one of the reasons Amy and Danny keep struggling to accept their reality, their life, and their feelings is that they don't entirely know themselves. Understandably, our entire life is a journey of getting to know ourselves, and maybe our protagonists are facing a midlife crisis. At times when people rethink their ambitions, desires, and priorities. A midlife crisis is a period or phase of life transition when a person begins to question the things that they have accomplished or achieved, and whether those same things still provide a sense of fulfillment and meaning, says Michael G. Wetter, a clinical psychologist practicing in Los Angeles. If not, a person may begin to question what can bring meaning and fulfillment to the later part of their life that may be missing or unexplored, he adds. This questioning may lead to an abrupt change in occupation, commitment to relationships, or hobby exploration, says Dr. Wetter. But it may also include more impulsive behaviors and actions such as risky spending habits and health concerns. The risky habits Amy is taking is getting involved in road rage, taking out the gun from the safe and playing with it, getting involved sexually and romantically with Paul, and starting a feud with Danny looking to destroy his life. Danny's risky habits are getting involved in road rage, stealing money from the church, stealing money from his cousin, snitching on his cousin, and starting a feud with Amy looking to destroy her life. Amy's signs of exploring new things that might bring a sense of fulfillment include trying to sell her company to eventually retire, becoming friends with Naomi and Jordan, and becoming a full-time mom. For example, when she says, "I expected this little child to make my whole world." On the contrary, Danny's signs of exploring his fulfillment include bringing his parents back to the United States and getting in touch with God. Danny tries to steal money from the church, but while spending time with everyone at Mass, he lets go while hearing the music. This meant he stopped repressing his emotions for that moment and embraced them. He reconnected with God and even involved in church and became one of the musicians and most present individuals in the group. He also tried to convince Paul to reconnect spiritually with God. Whether God exists or not, his image or presence offers a sense of comprehension as it allows humans to avoid feeling lonely or empty. For example, in episode 3, I Am Inhabited by a Cry, Danny breaks down and starts crying in church, and that makes me think that sometimes we feel so much pain and we are so lost in that we need help from a bigger, loving and caring figure. Number 5, love emerges from hate. They say that we dislike those that are like us because we may function like mirrors and see ourselves reflected in others, or see what we don't like about ourselves in others. I think this is the case for Amy and Danny. They hate each other to the bone. They are committed to hurting and damaging one another. Moreover, they are very much alike. They are both dealing with the same issues. They have a realistic perspective of life, and perhaps that's what's making them feel unsatisfied, but instead of becoming friends and supporting each other because they can understand one another, they impulsively fight, trying to pass on the pain and the anger to the other to get rid of those emotions. They tried feeling better by beefing with each other when they could have just made amends, become friends, and support one another to overcome their struggles and satisfy the need of feeling understood and cared for. In the end, when they accidentally take poisonous berries and start hallucinating, Danny says, "Maybe we're not normal. Maybe we're too fucked up." Then Amy answers, "Or maybe normal people are just delusional fucked up people." This is an entire existential question. Are Amy and Danny crazy and delusional, and that's why they are angry and dissatisfied? Or are Amy and Danny crazy because they are realists in a profoundly sick world and they can see others looking for distractions while they constantly and deliberately turn blind toward reality? I think Danny and Amy are both realists who understand that life is much more complex than just having money and achieving your goals. They know they need more and want more. Their perspectives of reality are most likely distorted by their disappointment. Yet that stems from understanding life is not as exciting as the media and society try to tell us. The idea of being happy is probably an illusion and impossible. That's why they understand each other and project onto one another, because they are humans experiencing the same thing. After complicating things so much to the point they ended up in the hospital, they ultimately accept they can be supportive and friends, and finally they hug. This was all for the article, and you can see the references in our website at flickpov.com if you want to see them. And regarding a deeper conversation about this article, I want to focus mainly on number 2, women doubting themselves. I think this is a good topic because I didn't get into much detail. I just tried to briefly mention one of the reasons why Amy is in distress, in a constant distress, I would say. But I think right now, the way that the world is built, women work more and more, and it's very normal, and as it should be, right? Women should be able to work in whatever they want, and there must be equal opportunity for women and men. However, I don't think we're at a point where we are fully equal, especially thinking about families and women who are married with children. I feel like nowadays there's this tendency of expecting women to bring bread to the table as a divided responsibility with their partner or their spouse, but they are also expected to raise children by themselves. I think that nowadays women are working, contributing to the household's finances, but most of them are still raising children by themselves. I think most of them, after working, they're putting the kids to bed, they're making dinner, they're doing homework with the children. And whilst there is more and more men as involved in their children's life as women, I think there's still a lot of men who don't really get involved, even to the point of men complaining in social media, saying, why do I have to babysit my kids? Now, I know this might be far from the topic because that doesn't happen in beef. But I do think that while Amy is focused on the company, making the company bigger, getting this deal so that she can retire, she's also in this pressure of be involved with your child. Make homework with your child because she needs you. And while she's doing all these things, her husband is having an affair with this woman who works for Amy. Now, Amy also had an affair, so I think this is equally wrong. But what I'm trying to get to the point, like what I'm trying to say specifically, is that I don't think that we focus enough on how women deal with the mental load. Now, if you don't know what the mental load is how women have in their heads, oh, I have to do this for work. I have to finish this project, or I have to present a pitch to sell the business. And while they're thinking on several things at the same time regarding work, they're doing the same things about the household, which men don't really do. For example, oh, you have to take the girl to the doctor's appointment. Or next week she has a vaccination appointment. Or next week there's a parent-teacher conference. And we also have to go home and make food and remember to tell this person what the child needs. Or in the case of Amy, she might be thinking, okay, tell the babysitter this, tell the babysitter that. And I do feel like even though Amy is not innocent, because she's also doing very questionable things, and I don't think she's the perfect role model, I do think that she is dealing with so much, and that can be the root of all this neurotic behavior that we see in her, and also all this involvement with the road rage, with beefing with Danny, and with ultimately self-sabotaging. And I don't think her husband is doing the same thing. I don't think he's at the same level of thinking everything has to be solved soon. He's just going on through life thinking, okay, well, what will happen? And so specifically in episode 2, when she says to George, I'm always busy working. When do I get to enjoy something, huh? Who's gonna buy Amy something? Amy is. And I think that's directly related to the mental workload. This whole pressure of things must be solved, things need to fall into place, and I have to think in advance on how to solve them, which I think not many husbands do, leaving most of the mental workload to their wives. And the mental workload, if you research it, it's a real phenomenon. It's not just women or feminists starting a new trend on social media. It's real, and it does have an effect on psychology and the mental health. Now, I also don't want to defend Amy too much because, as I said before, like, these people are trying to cope with their dissatisfaction in life They're trying to deal with all this stress by coping through road rage and beefing, and they're just making life worse for them. Which takes us to one of the most important lessons from this show, which is face your discomfort. Many a times we're told, face your fears. What doesn't kill you make you stronger. But I think we should be focusing on face your discomfort. Acknowledge what makes you uncomfortable and fix it. And go to therapy. I mean, nowadays it's more and more common and acceptable and less taboo going to a therapist. But I think that if Danny and Amy spent all the effort and all the time they're spending on destroying one another, they could be doing it in therapy. They could invest all that time and all that energy, and they would be much better. And I also want to deepen on one little detail before I finish this episode. I did say that this show can make us think about how not everything is about success and wealth, and maybe enjoying life is not about success and wealth. I do want to point out that I don't want to say the typical aphorism of money doesn't buy happiness, because I do feel like when you have money, you have access to so many opportunities that will eventually grant mental stability and mental health. I think if for example, Steven, compared to Amy, if he would want to go to therapy, maybe he wouldn't be able to afford it. And if we're being realistic, nowadays therapists are either too expensive or fully booked. And so, for example, I've got friends who are waiting to get an appointment with the psychologist, and they've been on the wait list for 8 months. So I do think we're also facing a mental health epidemic that we don't talk about enough. So I don't want to say the typical phrase of, okay, but Amy just proved to us that money doesn't buy happiness. I think Amy is also proving a little bit of neglect, because, I mean, also Danny, but specifically Amy, with the resources she has, she could make her situation much better by going to therapy. And maybe going to therapy more often. And I do think that with the cost of gas nowadays, spending that much money trying to crash someone else's car, I mean, just let them be. Because at the end of the day, she is privileged. Like, she can destroy Danny's life, and she's just gonna go back home and enjoy her little life. Well, or maybe not enjoy it, because we can see it that she doesn't, but she's maybe gonna go back home and being able to move on easier than Danny would. And the reason why I'm talking a lot about Amy more than Danny is because I started relating to her a little bit with the mental workload. And I feel like I'm being the devil's advocate, but I also don't want to be fully blind to Amy's problematic behaviors and how she's also, abusing her power in a way. And I do think that even though that money does grant you the access for many opportunities in which you can have mental health or provide yourself needs other than food at the table, I do think that some people, once they are at a point in their life when they are successful and they are maybe not wealthy but financially stable, they still find ways of blaming others. And I think that it just comes to a point in life, if you are comfortable and you've already covered your basic needs, your mental needs, maybe it's time to stop blaming others and look in the mirror. Maybe it's time to look at your own toxic traits. And I do think that Amy tries to do that, but ultimately ends up putting too much pressure on herself, blaming herself, and that's also not productive. I mean, you cannot go from thinking you're the worst person in the world to then thinking, oh, I'm great, and then I'm gonna destroy someone else. Because either way, you're still not solving your issues. And without being too redundant, that was it for today. Thank you for hearing 5 keys to understanding beef on a deeper level. Remember, you can always read our articles at flickpov.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us at Substack, Instagram, and Pinterest as FlickPOV website. Thank you very much. See you next time.